So how has life been treating you, Bill?
Well, as you know, I've been recovering from a stroke, Barry, and but over the last few months, I've been running quite a few workshops, and I'm going to have to stop doing them because my health is starting to suffer. So, but I'm quite happy to do a Zoom with you and all your followers over there, and hopefully between the two of us, we can update them on what's happening.
And apparently the High Court has put a ruling forward. You tell the world about this. That's may change everywhere else, because once it starts in one place, and of course you're in a Labour, you've got a Labour government as like we have here in Victoria, and of course other parts of Australia as well, which are the world's leading when it comes to criminality. These guys are experts. So what's happening with the High Court, Bill?
Well, actually, first of all, I think I need to address what you just said, Barry, before I go to the High Court decision. But the government, or the so-called government, is a private company as opposed to being a government. And in New Zealand here, it was set up in 1986 in the Constitution Act. So the Constitution Act set up the new company, which was called the Queen and Right of New Zealand. Now that company gave itself the right to set up a company and run New Zealand. They do have to get permission from the Maori Council, the Ratana Church, and the King over here for that company to run. Now, every year they get that permission, and those, the Maori Council, the Ratana Church and the King, they get their commission for allowing that company to run. But as the company is only a piece of paper, Barry, what can a piece of paper do to you? And I suggest very little. But they administer deceased estates in our Father's name. And those deceased estates that they're administering, they send in agents to act for the administrators. And so if you know how to answer the questions correctly and ask them the right questions, there's very little they can do. So we've certainly worked out how to do that, and I had a girl walk out of court a couple of weeks back just by writing one letter to the court, and she walked straight out of court. Now, I believe that you guys are going about it slightly different, but everyone's got their own little way of doing things. Now, I believe you're doing the common law court, is that right?
Yeah, it's correct. We've that set up and running. We've had three really good court cases under normal strange circumstances, because we were in lockdown. Venues were impossible to get, but now it's open slatter. So from now on, you'll be seeing a lot more results from the common law court jury, which the people are making the decisions, and they'll decide who's guilty and who's not guilty. Not me, you, I, but as a large gathering of people get together to solve or sort out a lawful remedy for crimes against the people themselves. That's what's happening here.
Great. And look, I think the final thing you need to know is that the government, because they can only see, the agents for the piece of paper can only see dead or deceased estates. They can't see the living. So when you present a case to them, Dr. Barry, they cannot see it because they're in the world of fiction. So what you need to look at, over here we have the 1934 Reciprocal Enforcement of Judgments Act. Now, you need to find that in your legislation. Now, if you go to the state legislation, the states are sovereign as opposed to if you go through the federal, because now you're going through the head company. So the states, if you find the legislation in your state, you go for Reciprocal Enforcement of Judgments Act. Now, because they can only act on certificates, you first need to do a search for certificates through the legislation, and you have to find out the certificate. Once you find the certificates, now over here our legislation says that forms in a schedule have statutory force. Therefore, forms in the High Court rules must be obeyed. So once you find the forms, and you will find the forms, Barry, you've just got to dig a little bit, but if you find the certificate and you fill out the certificate, and there's a few little tricks to that which I will show you in a private meeting, but also once you have done that certificate, then you apply to the court for a reciprocal enforcement of judgment, and they must give it to you because they cannot take away man's rights. Now, like I was saying before, because it's a piece of paper, and our government was set up under the 1986 Constitution Act, the World Court said to them, hey, you can't do that, you've got to contain the rights for the people. Now, under the American Constitution, they had amendments to the Act. So the company has a constitution, and under the American Constitution, to give the people their rights, they had to do amendments like the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, the right to remain silent. All those came in the amendment. So our rights came in the Imperial Laws Application Act 1988, and that satisfied the World Court that our rights were upheld. Now, a lot of people go to the 1990 Bill of Rights Act, which is not quite right. It's better to go to the Imperial Laws application because first in time is best in time. And so if you go back to when they held King John at the point of a sword and forced him to sign the Magna Carta, that Magna Carta upheld our rights. But because the corporations cannot see the living man, they had to put it into statute. Now, as their agents, they're sworn to uphold statute. And so if you ask them if they're an agent of the Crown, they have to answer yes. And are you sworn to uphold statute? Yes. Right, here's the statute I want you to uphold. Now, what they did with the Magna Carta was they enshrined it into Statutes of Westminster the First. Okay, now that's in our rights under the Imperial Laws Application Act. So when you know that, you hold them to that act. Now, like, for example, under Section 92Y of the Health Act 1956, it says force not permissible. So the Health Act, they tell you they cannot force you to do anything. So in the court case that I'm going to go to in a second, Yardley versus the Minister for Workplace Relations and Safety, they didn't use that. If they'd used that and a few other bits that I use, like Section 240 of the Crimes Act, which is misrepresentation. Okay, so under Section 240 of the Crimes Act 1961, obtaining by deception or causing loss by deception. Everyone is guilty of obtaining by deception or causing loss by deception who by any deception and without claim of right. Now, there's the key words, without claim of right. Now, they can never give a claim of right, Barry. Yeah. And so if you have a claim of right, there's nothing they can do. So, but if you ask them the first two questions, once again, are you an agent of the Crown? Yes, they are. Are you sworn to uphold statute? Yes, right. Have a look at Section 240 of the Crimes Act and then refer them to Section 40 of the Contract and Commercial Law Act. Okay, Dr. Barry, under Section 40 of the Contract and Commercial Law Act, it says Sections 36 to 39 have effect in place of the rules of the common law and of equity, governing the circumstances in which a party to a contract may rescind it or treated as discharged for misrepresentation. Okay, so they're misrepresenting the fact that they are prosecuting a trust in the name of the father, or a trust in the name of Lundove or Turner. Okay, so they're also in breach of Section 5 of the Secret Commissions Act 1910. So first of all, you once you've established what their status is, that they're an agent of the Crown and they're sworn to uphold statute, then you quote those 3 acts and they've got to uphold them. They're sworn to. There's nothing they can do. Now, when you're doing your common law court, you make your decision, and then you hold them accountable with a certificate, and you also go in for a judgment in their own court under the Reciprocal Enforcement of Judgments Act. Okay, so you will get a foreign judgment because we're foreign to them. We're living and they can only see dead. So we get a foreign judgment, and that upholds your common law court. Now they've got to go out and arrest it.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, the police force here, well, all police forces in Australia are not just private corporations, they've gone beyond that. There's a lot of decent cops out there that are sick and tired of it, and that I know for a fact. But with the common law court, the only difference is we don't take it near them at all. We go to the people, and we had a couple of 100 people turn up at the last sessions we had, and out of that we picked 2 juries, and that was a big job because we had a couple of girls going around with a box with, there was only 12 numbers numbered from 1 to 12, and went through about 60 people because there was a couple of 100 blanks in there. So it was a really random way of picking a jury, and eventually everybody got a number moved over to the chairs with the 12, and we got a jury. It was a bit of, everybody wanted to be on the jury, but it was a laugh when we trying to pick them, and we did that, and then they got sworn in. So the people in a common law court make a decision whether they're guilty or not, and then they go and deliberate for a while, and sometimes it's a bit of a pain. They go away for too long, and they come back with the remedy. Now, the remedy may be monetary at the moment because not much point putting people in jail, although the police will, and again, something I know for a fact, will, if it's a very serious indictable offence, may take up on behalf of the jury that case and arrest the people. That has to happen yet, but it looks like it's going to happen. And should it happen, we've got quite a few court cases coming up at the moment, but they're only for people losing their jobs and stuff like that. So we have got no criminals apart from the politicians in sight, Bill. So tell us more about this case you had in New Zealand, where it obviously will have ramifications for our crooked governments over here, our crooked corporations, that people may get their jobs back. They've lost them because of refusing to get vaccinated. Is that what can you tell us on that, Bill? I'm sure there's a lot of people hanging out to hear that one.
Yeah, well, it's Yardley versus the Minister for Workplace Relations and Safety, the Commissioner of Police, and the Chief of Defence Force. So the Yardley, Ryan Yardley, and Joshua Wallace took
the Minister of... Sorry, Bill. Are they police and army together, these 2 guys? Well, we don't know who they are.
Yeah, indeed they are, and they took them to court, and the court found in their favour, and it's quite a lengthy article, Barry. But what happened was they upheld their submissions and agreed with them that yes, the police could not force them to be jabbed, or the army could not force them to be jabbed. And so now we have a case precedent that anyone can use.
So anybody who's lost their job now in New Zealand, anyway, to start with, can actually, well, force their way back into their job. Would that be fair to say?
Yep. Wow. So if you do a search, Yardley versus the Minister of Health, you'll find that you'll find that online now.
Yeah.
And you can use that in a submission. Now, quite honestly, they used lawyers to do it, Barry, and I would have used, myself, I would have used section 92Y of the Health Act 1956. And your little dog in the corner there agrees with me. He's nodding his head. Okay, so I would have used section 92Y of the Health Act. He's taken no notice of you, Barry. He's listening to me. The Health Act, okay, Barry, what I would have used if I was doing this submission is section 92Y of the Health Act 1956. 92Y says force not permissible. In no case may force be used to secure compliance with a direction. Okay, so anything that they bring out, and like in the Imperial Laws Application Act 1988, where our rights are contained, they clearly state that the company gave themselves the right to put out subordinate legislation. So everything that the company puts out is subordinate to the Imperial Acts. And all those Imperial Acts, like I told you, the Statutes of Westminster the First, anything that company, the Queen and Right of New Zealand, or it's now the Sovereign and Right of New Zealand, anything that they put out is subordinate to those Imperial Acts. Now, it's not only subordinate, now they're only issuing mandates and secondary legislation. So it's at the bottom of the scrap heap. Now, it's lucky that under the Constitution Act 1986, that they gave themselves the right to appoint a Governor General. So the Queen's got nothing to do with the running of this country. And may I suggest the same thing over there, because it's a private company, yeah, and they're only agents for the Crown. The Queen is only an agent for the Crown. And so anything that company brings out is subordinate. And little dog is shaking his head there. He believes that's correct. So the subordinate or mandates that they bring out have got no force in law, and so the judge must uphold them. If you just ask those two simple questions, are you an agent of the Crown? Are you sworn to uphold statute? And then point them to the statutes that they're supposed to uphold. So I guess your research is over that side of the ditch, where I believe it's flooding all the way up north of you, Barry.
Yeah. Came back last night at 10, arrived in Melbourne at 10 o'clock. They left 6 o'clock in Brisbane, and they were worried about getting out because apparently they were going to ground the aircraft for a while up there. I don't know whether they've still done it or not. But I've been up there a couple of times in Brisbane after the floods, and the amount of damage which is reoccurring again. Of course, Brisbane is, I think, is down around sea level or below sea level, so. They built the city on a river that just can't handle the flow, so it's repetitive, and they don't seem to do much about it. Probably the only way is to move Brisbane, which they can't, up to a higher ground like they would a village. But I don't know what's going to end there. But it's repetitive year after. Well, every few years it gets bad, yeah. But that's life, I guess.
Well, I'm not suggesting this, but this is what the Australians told me, that the Queenslanders are very slow. They take 2 hours to watch 60 minutes. But that's not me saying that, Barry. That's them telling me that. So, so I apologise to any Queenslanders, but that was told to me by New South Welshmen.
Yeah, they're a bit laid back, Queensland. It's a great place, but apparently now it's around the Gold Coast, which is it's the most beautiful place in the world, really. It's overrun by criminal gangs and stuff like that, which you don't see on the street. You can still go there. There's no problem. But it's like everywhere in the world has changed. And since we've had all this rubbish going on for the last few years, people have changed, and the people don't seem to smile anymore. They got very little to smile about in one sense, but if you're alive and you got your health, well, that's all you really need. But,
indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that's shone a bit of light on some of the things that you were looking for, Barry. Hope it's helped you.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic, Bill. There's a lot of people looking forward to seeing you around the world, and we'll be on Rumble as well as YouTube, and probably up on Odyssey, and what's the other one? BitChute as well. But anyway, it's fantastic to have you back on, and we're back on the Hall of Fame on the wall again. And look, it's really fantastic, and I'm glad that you're looking to get over all your medical problems, and you're back to normal. And normal for you is pretty naughty. I won't mention another word about that. So, okay, Bill, thanks for popping on to say hi to all your friends around the world, and we'll catch you again soon, and we'll keep in touch on the phone as we usually do.
Thank you very much, Barry, and to all your subscribers out there. You're doing a great job, and hopefully this helps them to put the final nail into the coffin, which I think is not too far away. So thank you once again, Barry.